Captain Voss had always thought the universe was nothing but an oversized junkyard, and today was no exception. The Verity, her ship, was cutting through the debris field like a knife through stale meatloaf. Given the choice, she'd have picked the meatloaf. Out here, amidst the husks of forgotten dreams and burnt-out hopes, Voss and her ragtag crew had a knack for finding trouble. Not that they were looking for it, trouble was just a clingy bastard. "Well, this is a shit show," Voss muttered, scanning the expanse of twisted metal and shattered glass that was once a proud fleet. Her first mate, Rig, a man whose personality was as charming as a cactus, leaned over her shoulder. "You say that every time we enter a new sector, Cap," Rig said, tapping a few buttons on the control panel. "If I didn't know better, I'd say you were a pessimist." "It's not pessimism if I'm right," Voss shot back, adjusting the ship's course to avoid what looked suspiciously like an old battlecruiser turned space piñata. Inside, the crew was bustling about with the enthusiasm of a funeral director at Happy Hour. Each of them was a testament to humanity's perseverance, or its inability to make good life choices. In the cramped quarters of the Verity, they were all sardines in a tin can. Tin being mostly metaphorical since everything here was some amalgamation of space-grade plastics and metals the color of a migraine. The crew consisted of Rig, whose greatest accomplishment was not dying from a hangover; Bessie, the engineer who could fix anything if you didn't mind a few explosions along the way; and Titcho, the navigator who had the directional sense of a drunk pigeon. "Captain, you might want to see this," Bessie called over from her station, where she was elbow-deep in something that emitted a concerning amount of smoke. "If it's another damn toaster, I swear," Voss began but stopped short when she saw the display. "That's not a toaster." "Nope," Bessie agreed, wiping her hands on her grease-stained jumpsuit. "That's a fleet of alien warships." The screen showed a cluster of sleek ships, all glistening menacingly in the starlight, like sharks waiting for a swim at the beach. Voss squinted at the data. "Why the hell would they park here?" "Maybe their sat-nav's broken," Titcho suggested dryly, not looking up from his star charts. "Or maybe," Rig interjected, "they're here for a reason." Voss sighed. "Great, just what we needed, more reasons." The ships didn't just loom ominously, they were armed to the teeth with something new, something unsettling. The Verity's sensors pinged nervously, as if even they were uneasy about what they detected. "Gravity weapons," Bessie said, her voice as flat as a dead planet. "They could turn our bones into a fine mist before you can say oops." Voss chewed her lip. "We need to get this intel back to the outpost. Assuming we don't become cosmic roadkill first," Rig added helpfully, scratching at his stubbly chin. "Always the optimist," Voss replied, plotting the fastest route out of the scrapyard. "But of course, nothing's ever easy." As the Verity maneuvered toward the exit, a large alien vessel drifted into their path, as graceful as a space whale with a grudge. "That's not going to let us through," Titcho observed, finally tearing his eyes away from his charts. The alien ship was all sleek lines and ominous glows, a menacing presence that screamed compensating for something. "Do they have a please move button on those things?" Bessie asked, half joking, as she checked the power levels on their modest arsenal. "Only one way to find out," Voss said, flipping the comms switch. "This is Captain Voss of the Verity." Requesting permission to pass. There was a static-laden pause, the kind that usually precedes bad news. Then a voice crackled back, a voice like gravel being poured through a blender. "Permission denied," it said, dripping with the kind of authority that makes you want to punch it in the face. Voss rolled her eyes. Well, that was to the point. "What now?" Rig asked, his tone suggesting he already regretted asking. Voss leaned back in her chair, fingers steepled under her chin. "Plan B, we improvise." Titcho groaned. "Cap, the last time we improvised, we ended up on an asteroid with less atmosphere than Rig's sense of humor." "Point taken," Voss said with a thin smile. "But unless any of you have a better idea, we're fresh out of options." The crew exchanged glances, the kind that conveyed a mixture of camaraderie and shared resignation. They were in this together for better or worse, mostly worse. All right, Voss said, standing up with the air of a captain about to make a very questionable decision. Bessie, get those engines ready for a sprint. Rig, warm up the guns. Titcho, navigate us the hell out of here while I charm our new friend. Charm, Bessie snorted, flipping a switch that made the whole ship hum ominously. That's what we'll call it. Voss flipped the comms back on. Alien vessel, this is your last chance to get out of our way. There was no reply, just the oppressive silence of the void and the slow, deliberate approach of the alien ship. Guess they don't want to chat, Voss said, her voice a mix of determination and fatalism. Plan B it is, Rig murmured, his fingers dancing over the weapon controls with the kind of focus usually reserved for bomb disposal or really good whiskey. The Verity lurched forward, engines whining in protest as they pushed to their limits. The alien ship loomed larger, a monolith of unknowable technology and intent, blocking their path like a cosmic bouncer. Engage evasive maneuvers, Voss shouted, gripping her seat as the Verity twisted and turned, ducking and diving through the debris. Dodging the alien ship's first volley was like trying to outmaneuver a swarm of angry bees with a blindfold on. Explosions flared around them, each one a reminder that today might just be their last. Next time, Titcho shouted over the chaos, let's pick a salvage job that's less likely to get us killed. Voss grinned, adrenaline coursing through her veins. Where's the fun in that? They were almost clear of the scrapyard when the alien ship let loose a gravity pulse. The Verity shuddered, systems flickering like a dying candle. Bessie, Voss yelled as alarms screamed their displeasure. Working on it, Bessie shouted back, hands a blur as she fought to keep the ship together. The Verity limped forward, space twisting around them, reality itself having a tantrum. If we make it out of this, Rig said, voice strained, drinks are on me. I'll hold you to that, Voss replied, eyes fixed on the view ahead where the open void promised freedom or oblivion. They broke free, the alien ship's weapons falling silent as the Verity surged into open space, battered but unbroken. We're clear, Cap, Titcho reported, relief evident in his words. Voss let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Set course for the outpost. We've got a war to warn. As the Verity sped away, leaving the scrapyard behind, Voss couldn't shake the feeling they were in for more than they'd bargained for. But then, that was just another day in the life of Captain Voss and her crew. The alien fleet still loomed in her mind, a shadow on the edge of a dark horizon, waiting, watching. A problem for tomorrow. For now, it was enough to be alive, and to have a crew crazy enough to follow her into madness. And as the stars streaked by, Voss allowed herself a small, grim smile. After all, tomorrow was another day. And who knew what fresh hell awaited them there? The Verity lurched through the scrapyard with all the grace of a drunk rhino, its engines whining like a toddler denied candy. Captain Voss was perched on the edge of her seat, eyes glued to the viewports. The sprawling debris field was a veritable maze of danger, each chunk of twisted metal and fractured hull a potential death sentence. Navigating it required the kind of finesse normally reserved for bomb defusal or pulling off an improbable bank heist, but Voss had a knack for making the improbable merely unlikely. Titcho, how's our path looking? Voss called out, her voice holding the kind of forced calm that hinted at an impending aneurysm. Titcho, the navigator with an uncanny ability to get lost in a paper bag, squinted at his charts. Well, if we take a left at whatever that is, he gestured vaguely at the viewport where a hunk of ancient starship drifted by, we should hit a clear patch, Rig chimed in, snarky as ever, or straight into the maw of an alien cruiser, 50-50. That's the spirit, Voss replied. Bessie, how are the engines? Bessie was elbow-deep in the bowels of the engineering console, her trademark grease-stained jumpsuit a testament to her love-hate relationship with the Verity's cantankerous systems. They'll hold together as long as the duct tape does, she grunted. So, another 5 minutes tops. Plenty of time, Voss said, mostly to herself. All right, folks, let's try not to die today. As they weaved through the wreckage, the ominous silhouette of the alien ship loomed closer, like a schoolyard bully eager to relieve them of their lunch money. The entire crew was on edge, tension crackling in the air like static before a storm. "You know," Riggs said, breaking the silence, "I always figured if I were going to die, it'd be something more dignified. Like choking on a steak, or a potato," Titcho added. "One of those big, menacing ones." "Focus, children," Voss snapped, though she couldn't stifle the ghost of a smile. "We've got work to do." The alien fleet's vessels hovered ominously, their sleek exteriors gleaming like the universe's most expensive murder devices. The gravity weapons they detected earlier were the stuff of nightmares, capable of turning a solid ship into a fine mist faster than you could say, "bad decision." "Any bright ideas about those gravity weapons?" Voss asked, hoping someone had a miracle up their sleeve. "Short of developing an immunity to physics in the next 10 seconds, no," Bessie answered. "But I did manage to rig the shields to maybe withstand one hit." "Maybe," Voss nodded, chewing her lip. "Maybe's better than nothing." She tapped a few controls, adjusting their course ever so slightly, hoping to use the debris to mask their signature. The trick was to become just another piece of cosmic flotsam. "Okay, listen up," she announced. "We need to use the debris field to our advantage. Move erratically, keep our profile low." "Titcho, think you can do that without getting us killed?" Titcho made a face. "I can try, but no promises." "Good enough for me," Voss replied, offering a thumbs up. "Rig, you ready to make some noise if we need to?" Rig grinned, hands hovering over the weapon controls like a kid in a candy store. "Been waiting all day." The Verity danced through the debris, its path erratic, like a fly evading a swatter. Each movement was a gamble, a calculated risk to stay hidden while moving ever closer to the edge of the scrapyard. "Cap," Titcho said suddenly, his voice pitched higher than usual. "They're onto us." The alien vessels began to shift, their movements subtle but unmistakable, like sharks sensing blood in the water. The Verity's sensors pinged warnings like a car alarm in a rough neighborhood. "Time for Plan C," Voss announced, the calm in her voice starting to crack. "Whatever that is, Plan C," Bessie muttered, shaking her head. "Throw the handbook out the window and pray." "Pretty much," Voss agreed. "Bessie, can you give us a burst of speed?" "Sure," Bessie said, flipping switches with reckless abandon. "But the engines will probably explode." "Probably?" Titcho asked, his concern palpable. 50-50, Bessie said with a shrug. "Take your pick." The Verity surged forward, its engines protesting violently. They shot between two hulking wrecks, narrowly avoiding a collision with a piece of space debris the size of a small moon. From behind them, the alien ships unleashed their gravity weapons, the void around them distorting as if space itself was a sheet of rubber being pulled. The Verity shuddered, alarms blaring their disapproval. "That one tickled," Riggs said, his voice strained. "Another hit like that and we'll be space confetti." "Just get us out of here, Titcho," Voss urged, gripping the armrests of her chair as if that would somehow save them. I'm trying," Titcho muttered, wrestling with the controls. They dodged another barrage, the Verity twisting and turning, skimming the surface of an ancient battleship that had been turned into a twisted hulk over centuries of neglect. "Almost clear," Titcho said, sweat beading on his forehead. "Just a little further." The alien ships, relentless in their pursuit, closed in. The gravity weapons charged again, the very air in the Verity seeming to thicken with tension. "Last push," Voss said, her voice a tight wire of determination. "Bessie, any more juice in those engines?" Bessie grinned wildly, eyes alight with the thrill of impending doom. "I can give you everything we've got. Hope you like fireworks." "Do it," Voss ordered. The Verity leapt forward, a final, desperate sprint for freedom. The debris field thinned, the open void beyond a tantalizing promise of escape. But promises in space are as reliable as a politician's handshake. The alien fleet unleashed one last gravity pulse, the universe itself warping and twisting around them. The Verity shuddered violently, systems flickering, alarms screaming. Voss held her breath, eyes fixed on the viewscreen as they tore through the final stretch of the scrapyard, debris whipping past them in a chaotic blur. And then, miraculously, they were free of the scrapyard, free of the immediate threat, free to live another day. The alien ships halted at the edge of the debris field, as if bound by some invisible tether. "We did it," Ticho breathed, disbelief coloring his words. "Well, I'll be damned," Rig chuckled, a mix of relief and exhilaration in his laugh. "We're still kicking." Bessie punched the air, a smudge of grease on her cheek only adding to the effect. "Engines are holding, Cap. We're in the clear." Voss allowed herself a moment of satisfaction, a rare smile tugging at her lips. "Good work, crew. We're still alive, and that's something." But as the Verity sped away, the threat of the alien fleet still loomed large in their minds. They might have evaded capture today, but the war was far from over. "Set course for the outpost," Voss instructed, her mind already on the intel they needed to deliver. "Let's hope we're not too late." As the stars blurred into streaks of light, Voss settled back into her chair, the weight of their narrow escape settling over her. The universe was still a junkyard, full of danger at every turn, but for now they had each other. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough to see them through whatever madness awaited them next. "Guess I owe everyone a drink," Rig said, his tone lighter now that they were temporarily out of the frying pan. "Make it a double," Bessie demanded, her grin infectious. Voss chuckled, the tension of the past few hours finally ebbing away. "We'll drink to today's escape and to tomorrow's insanity." For in the grimdark expanse of space, survival was always a precarious balance between luck, skill, and sheer bloody-mindedness. And the crew of the Verity wouldn't have it any other way. The Verity continued its frenetic dance through the scrapyard, a lurching, clattering madness that made you question the sanity of everyone on board. If the ship was their lifeline, it was a rope frayed at every edge, begging to snap. Captain Voss wiped the sweat from her brow, her mind already racing to whatever insane plan she had to concoct next. "Ticho, where are we?" Voss barked, squinting at the chaotic swirls of debris outside. "Lost," Ticho replied as if it were his middle name, "though I think we're coming up on an old human battleship. Big bastard, should be hard to miss." "Should be," Rig echoed, leaning back in his seat with a grin. "Unless Ticho's navigating again." "Let's get a closer look," Voss said, ignoring the banter with the grace of a professional referee in the middle of a bar brawl. "Bessie, keep those engines purring." "I'd rather not die in a hunk of space rubble." Bessie grunted her acknowledgement, already elbow-deep in wires and circuits that looked like they were held together with sheer willpower and a prayer to the space gods. "You keep us clear, Cap, and I'll keep us running. Might even get a coffee machine working one of these days." As they approached the battleship, its silhouette grew against the backdrop of stars and junk. It was a beast of a ship, the kind of thing that made you want to salute or swear, depending on your mood and amount of caffeine intake. The hull was battered and coated with the dust of 1,000 forgotten skirmishes. Yet there it loomed, a testament, sorry, a bloody reminder, of humanity's knack for giant, impractical monstrosities. "Well, there's our decoy," Voss muttered, a plan beginning to take shape. "We need to make it look alive, though." "Alive?" Rig snorted. "You want us to resurrect the damn thing? Think of it as a ghost ship," Voss replied, her eyes narrowing with mischief. "We'll fire up the old reactors, make it look like it's operational. The aliens will think we're trying to lead them into a trap." "Genius," Ticho said, deadpan. "And when they realize it's not, what's Plan D?" Voss gave him a look that could curdle milk. "Plan D is I throw you at them as a distraction." "Sounds fair," Rig interjected. "They'd choke on all that optimism." "Let's get to work," Voss ordered, her mind already racing over the logistics. "Bessie, think you can get those reactors humming?" Bessie cracked her knuckles, a gleam of excitement in her eyes. "Cap, you get me over there and I'll make that heap sing hallelujah." The Verity sidled up to the battleship, close enough for a docking maneuver that was as delicate as a bull in a china shop. The airlock clanged and hissed, sealing their fate as they prepared to board. "All right, team, let's move," Voss commanded, pulling on her helmet. "Rig, you're with me. Ticho, you have the bridge. If you see any aliens, run, Titcho advised, waving them off with a grin. The boarding party moved through the airlock, their boots clanging against the metallic corridors of the battleship. The place was a museum of war, filled with rusting relics and echoes of battles long forgotten. Nostalgia was for historians and drunkards, and neither were useful out here. Feels like my ex's place, Rig muttered, glancing around. Dark, abandoned and probably full of traps. Save the love stories, Voss quipped, checking her wrist scanner. Bessie, reactors should be this way. They wound their way through corridors of twisted metal and shadows, the silence oppressive. The reactor room loomed ahead, a monument to human engineering, or insanity, depending on your perspective. Here we are, Bessie said, rubbing her hands together like a kid at an all-you-can-eat candy buffet. Give me a few minutes and pray to whatever gods you hold dear. No gods here, Rig replied, leaning against a console. Just Bessie and her magic hands. Bessie got to work, the clatter of tools and muttered curses filling the room. The process was like performing heart surgery on a dinosaur, a dead dinosaur at that, but she seemed to relish the challenge. Voss paced, her mind a constant churn of calculations and contingency plans. We get this thing lit up, we hightail it back to the Verity. Should give us enough time to put some distance between us and those alien bastards. You think they'll fall for it? Rig asked, watching Bessie with an expression that screamed dubious optimism. They're relentless, but they're not perfect, Voss replied. With any luck, they'll hesitate just long enough for us to get away, and if not, Rig pressed. Then we'll get a nice light show on the way out, Voss shrugged. Always wanted to see a fireworks display in space. Consider it done, Bessie announced, stepping back from the reactor. She's primed and ready. Let's hope she doesn't blow up in our faces. The reactor hummed to life, the battleship flickering with a ghostly energy. Systems sputtered back into operation. Lights, sensors, and the deep, resonant thrum of life filled the corridors that had been silent for decades. All right, let's move, Voss ordered, leading them back toward the Verity. We don't want to be here when the party starts. Back on the Verity, Titcho had been monitoring their alien friends with all the enthusiasm of a cat watching a laser pointer. Looks like they're curious, he reported, a hint of pride in his voice. Curiosity killed the cat, Rig replied, strapping in. Let's hope it kills a few aliens too. Voss settled into her seat, every nerve on edge. Titcho, get us out of here. Bessie, try not to blow us up. Rig, keep those weapons hot. The Verity pulled away from the battleship, slipping through the debris with a newfound urgency. The alien fleet hesitated, their movements uncertain as they assessed the newly awakened battleship. Come on, take the bait, Voss muttered, her eyes fixed on the screen. The aliens lingered, and for a moment it seemed like the plan might actually work. But slowly they began to shift their attention back to the fleeing Verity, a hunter refocusing on its original prey. Damn, Rig said. Looks like they're not buying it for long. Plan D, Titcho suggested. Plan E, Voss corrected, a wicked grin spreading across her face. We keep dodging until they get bored, or we find another decoy, or we run out of luck, Rig added. Luck's just a fancy way of saying not dead yet, Bessie chimed in, fingers dancing over her console. The Verity weaved and bobbed, Titcho's hands moving with the precision of a drunken acrobat. The aliens closed in, relentless in their pursuit. Think we can make them crash into each other? Rig suggested, his eyes lighting up with the prospect of destructive chaos. I like your style, Voss replied. Titcho, thread the needle. The Verity plunged deeper into the scrapyard, the aliens hot on their tail. It was a madcap race through the graveyard of ships, each maneuver more reckless than the last. Think they're gaining, Titcho warned, a bead of sweat trickling down his face. They're fast learners, Voss acknowledged, but so are we. Rig, give them something to think about. Rig unleashed a barrage of missiles, the explosions lighting up the darkness like a cosmic rave. The aliens dodged, but the distraction was enough to give the Verity a momentary lead. There's a cluster of debris up ahead, Titcho said, his voice tight. Might be our chance to lose them, take it, Voss ordered. And make it count. The Verity plunged into the cluster, a tangled mess of wreckage and ruin. The ship twisted and turned, the creaking of the hull a constant reminder of their precarious situation. "Hold on to something," Voss yelled as the ship skidded through the debris. "Always dreamed of dying in a metal sandwich," Rig quipped, his grip white-knuckled. The Verity emerged on the other side, the alien ships momentarily disoriented by the chaos. It was a brief reprieve, but one they desperately needed. "Think we lost them for a second," Titcho reported, a hint of disbelief in his voice. "Good," Voss said. "But we can't count on them staying lost. Find us a path out of this mess." As they sped through the scrapyard, the tension in the Verity gradually eased. The alien ships were still a threat, yes, but they were no longer breathing down their necks like a disgruntled supervisor on a Monday morning. "Think we'll make it to the outpost?" Bessie asked, her tone lighter now that the immediate danger had passed. "If we don't, I'm blaming Titcho," Rig replied. "Navigator's job, after all." "Hey, I got us this far," Titcho protested. "Might even get us all the way if you keep your fingers crossed and mouths shut." "Enough," Voss interjected, though there was warmth in her voice. "We've got a long way to go yet, and I'd rather not hear your bickering all the way there." As the Verity left the scrapyard behind, the crew settled into a more familiar rhythm. The immediate threat had passed, but the galaxy was still out there, waiting to chew them up and spit them back out. "Anyone else feel like we're living on borrowed time?" Rig asked, a dark chuckle in his voice. "Isn't that the human condition?" Bessie replied, a wry smile on her lips. "True," Voss conceded, her eyes on the stars ahead. "But for now, we're alive. That's more than enough." And as the Verity sailed through the void, the crew knew one thing for certain. They'd face whatever madness came next with grit, determination, and a healthy dose of dark humor. Because in the end, what else was there? The Verity drifted through space like a drunk trying to remember where they left their car, the tension on the bridge thick enough to cut with a vibro blade. Voss leaned back in her worn captain's chair, her mind a frenetic dance of scenarios and outcomes, most of them grim. "We need backup," she declared, glancing at the ragged crew. "Any suggestions that don't involve us dying?" Rig scratched his chin thoughtfully. "How about screaming for help?" "Brilliant," Voss replied, rolling her eyes. "Let's just hope the neighbors are in a philanthropic mood." She keyed the communicator, sending a desperate signal to any nearby human fleet. The message was short and not so sweet. "This is Captain Voss of the Verity. Under attack. Any assistance appreciated before we're space dust." Titcho chuckled from his post, plotting their course through the increasingly hostile scrapyard. "You think anyone'll hear us, or care if they do?" "Hope's not dead. Just on life support," Voss replied, forcing a grim smile. Bessie gave a sarcastic thumbs-up from her console. "Well, if hope fails, there's always the plan to blow ourselves up and take them with us." "I like your optimism, Bessie," Rig remarked. "Almost makes me forget we're up against aliens who think we're their snack." The Verity lurched suddenly, and Voss swore under her breath as warning alarms blared. The alien ships had upped the ante, their attacks more aggressive. The bastards must have intercepted the transmission, deciding to make their displeasure known. Subtlety wasn't in their playbook. "Seems they've taken a personal interest in us," Titcho said, his voice laced with gallows humor. "I always wanted to feel special," Voss muttered. "Just not like this." The ship shuddered as another hit rattled the hull. The aliens were using a gravity weapon, collapsing parts of the scrapyard around them. It was as if they were trying to compact them into a neat little cube of doom. "Guess they got tired of waiting for us to self-destruct," Rig said, strapping himself in tighter. "Can't say I blame them." Voss flexed her hands, a futile attempt to relieve the tension. "All right, folks, we need options. Now." "We could always try reasoning with them," Titcho suggested, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "You know, please and thank you might work. Or we could tell them we've got plague," Bessie added. "Might make them back off. Or it might make them sneeze on us," Rig countered, the humor darkening his eyes. "And I'd rather not die covered in alien snot." "Focus," Voss snapped, though there was a twitch of a smile in her voice. "Titcho, get us some distance." Rig, keep those weapons at the ready. Bessie, keep us in one piece. The Verity twisted through the debris, Ticho's hands a blur as he fought to maintain control. Each maneuver was a dance with death, the alien ships closing in with relentless precision. Think we might outrun them? Rig asked, firing another volley at their pursuers. Think pigs might fly? Bessie shot back, her fingers working furiously over the console. Can we at least get a refund on this ride? Ticho quipped, voice tight with tension. Sorry, no refunds, Voss replied, a grim chuckle escaping her lips. All sails final. The ship shuddered again, an explosion rocking them as the aliens pressed their advantage. Voss felt the vibrations through her boots, each one a reminder of just how close they were to being space dust. We're getting boxed in, Ticho warned, eyes flicking over the screens. They're closing off escape routes faster than we can find them. Then we'll have to make our own, Voss decided, determination hardening her features. We can't sit here and wait to die. Got a plan, or are we improvising again? Rig asked, his grin a lopsided line of defiance. Improvisation's our specialty, Bessie said, her smile mirroring Rig's. Right, Cap? Always, Voss replied, her mind racing with possibilities. Let's find something big and nasty to hide behind. Maybe we can use it to turn the tables. As Ticho navigated them toward a particularly dense section of the scrapyard, Voss scanned for potential cover. There, a cluster of old freighters welded together by time and neglect loomed like a fortress of junk. Perfect. This better work, Ticho muttered, his hands steady despite the chaos. It'll work, Voss said, more to convince herself than anyone else. Or we'll die trying. No pressure, right? Rig remarked, his voice a mix of sarcasm and genuine resolve. The Verity raced toward the freighters, the alien ships hot on their heels. Voss's heart pounded in her chest, every instinct screaming at her to survive. She'd be damned if she'd let a bunch of aliens with a penchant for destruction take her down without a fight. As they reached the freighters, Ticho pulled a maneuver that would have made a seasoned pilot weep tears of admiration or horror. The Verity plunged into the mass of wreckage, the ship weaving through tight spaces with a deftness that belied its age. Anyone else feel like we're threading a needle blindfolded? Bessie asked, her voice tight. It's all fun and games until someone loses an eye, Rig replied, bracing himself as they shot through another narrow gap. The aliens hesitated, their strategy momentarily thrown off by the Verity's audacity. It was a brief reprieve, but they couldn't rely on it lasting long. Alien persistence was the one constant in their chaotic universe. Think they're confused, Ticho said, a note of triumph in his voice. Good, Voss replied. Let's make it hurt while we've got the chance. Rig launched another volley, the missiles streaking through the debris and detonating with satisfying force. The explosions reverberated through the scrapyard, a cacophony of destruction that echoed Voss's own defiance. Maybe we can trap them in here, Bessie suggested, her mind racing with possibilities. Use the wreckage to our advantage. Like a roach motel, Rig added. They check in, but they don't check out. Exactly, Voss said, her mind clicking into place. Ticho, find us a weak spot. Let's see if we can crash the party. As Ticho scanned the surroundings, Voss felt a flicker of hope. It was fragile like a candle in the wind, but it was hope nonetheless. They'd been through hell and back before, they could do it again. Found something, Ticho announced, his eyes lighting up. Looks like a structural weak point. If we can hit it just right, we might collapse part of the junk on them and turn this scrapyard into an alien graveyard, Rig finished, a wicked grin spreading across his face. Do it, Voss ordered, feeling a surge of adrenaline. Let's give them one hell of a send-off. Rig fired, the missiles arcing through space with deadly intent. The explosion was a symphony of chaos, metal grinding against metal as the wreckage collapsed on their pursuers. For a moment, the aliens were caught off guard, their formation thrown into disarray. It was a small victory, but a victory nonetheless. Think that bought us some time, Ticho said, his voice almost disbelieving. Not much, but enough to keep us in the game, Voss replied. Let's not waste it. The Verity pulled away from the collapsing wreckage, the alien ship struggling to regroup. Voss felt a thrill of victory in her veins, tempered by the knowledge that the fight was far from over. "Anyone else getting tired of these guys?" Rig asked, his tone light despite the gravity of their situation. "Like cockroaches," Bessie replied, shaking her head. "Can't kill him fast enough. Maybe we should start charging them rent," Titcho suggested. "At least make some money off this mess." "Only currency they deal in is violence," Voss said, a wry smile tugging at her lips. "And we're fresh out of change." As they sped through the scrapyard, the Verity's crew shared a moment of camaraderie. They were battered, bruised, but unbroken. If the universe wanted to throw more alien hell their way, they'd face it with the same grit and dark humor that had gotten them this far. "Think we'll make it to that human fleet?" Bessie asked, her voice carrying a hint of hope. "If we don't, at least we went down swinging," Rig replied, his grin a defiant challenge to the void. "And if we do," Titcho added, "drinks are on me." "Let's focus on not dying first," Voss interjected, though her tone was lighter. "Then we can worry about who's buying the drinks." As the Verity sailed through the scrapyard, the crew knew they had to keep fighting, keep surviving. The aliens would be back, more determined than ever, but so would they. Armed with sarcasm, stubbornness, and the indomitable spirit that defined humanity, they'd face whatever came next. Because in the end, when the universe threw everything it had at them, they stared back with wry smiles and middle fingers raised. "Well, if this isn't just a delightful little pit of despair," Voss muttered, staring out at the mass of alien ships slowly closing in on the Verity. The view from the bridge was an artist's rendition of hell, all sharp angles and malevolent silhouettes. "Real welcoming committee they've got," Bessie chimed in from her console, fingers dancing over buttons like a pianist playing the world's shittiest symphony. "Did we remember to RSVP, or did that go out the airlock along with our last shred of hope?" "Hope's like a passenger we forgot to pick up," Rig replied, squinting at the tactical display. "Not on board, but we keep pretending it's in the cargo hold." Titcho, wrestling with the controls as the Verity groaned its protest, snorted. "Hope's what they call that stuff they scrape off the bottom of our boots back on Terra. Useless and smells funny." Voss, despite the tension squeezing her like a pirate's handshake, allowed herself a smirk. "All right, let's not get sentimental about what's probably going to be our final resting place. If we're going down, we might as well do it on our terms." "No white flag for us then?" Bessie asked, eyebrows raised as if surrender had ever been an option. "Only if we're using it to wipe the floor with these bastards," Voss shot back, her eyes flicking over the crew. "We're not done yet. They want to crush us so bad, let's make sure we're a pain in their gravity-warping asses first." Rig chuckled, but there was a hard edge to it. "Sounds like a plan. Dying's bad enough without making it easy for them." Titcho adjusted their course, the ship shuddering as it banked hard to port. "Got any more insane plans up your sleeve, Cap? Preferably ones that don't end with us as cosmic confetti." Voss frowned, her brain a chaotic mess of potential strategies, each riskier and more reckless than the last. "We need to find that one vulnerability, the chink in their armor. There's got to be something." A moment of silence settled over the bridge, broken only by the hum of consoles and the distant, ominous thrum of the alien gravity weapon. It was a sound that promised a swift, merciless end. "Could be worse," Bessie said, breaking the tension. "We could be stuck playing cards with Titcho again." "Hey," Titcho protested, "I may cheat, but only when I'm trying to win." Rig sighed theatrically. "You cheat when you lose, too. Remember that time on the Orion station." "Focus, people," Voss interrupted, though the banter was a welcome distraction. "This ship might be held together with duct tape and dreams, but we're still breathing. Let's keep it that way." "Breathing's good," Rig agreed. "I've grown attached to my lungs." Suddenly, an idea struck Voss like a bolt from the blue, a bolt that was probably wired wrong and liable to explode, but what the hell? What if we overload their gravity weapon? Turn their own tech against them, Bessie gave her a look, one part disbelief, two parts admiration. You mean make their fancy toy backfire? I like the way you think, Cap. Or don't think, Rig added with a grin. But hey, desperate times and all. Voss nodded, her mind racing. Titsho, can you get us close enough to that weapon without getting us vaporized? Close, sure. In one piece. That's the real question, Titsho said, grimacing at the controls. Just take it slow and steady, like a first date with someone you've already figured out is a pyromaniac, Bessie said. That's reassuring, Titsho muttered, shifting their trajectory. All right, let's see if we can poke the bear without losing an arm. As the Verity edged closer to the alien fleet, the tension ratcheted up to near unbearable levels. Voss could feel it, thrumming in her bones like the prelude to a particularly nasty hangover. Rig positioned himself at the weapon's console, his fingers itching to hit the trigger. Ready when you are, Cap. Let's give them something to remember us by. Assuming they have memories, Bessie added. Or brains. Or whatever it is that makes them keep coming back like a bad rash. Everyone's got something, Voss replied, feeling the weight of her responsibility. All right, on my mark, let's light them up. The seconds stretched into eternities as the Verity crept into range. The alien gravity weapon loomed ahead, a monstrous construct bristling with menace. Voss could almost see the intricate web of power that held it together, a delicate balance they were about to shove over the edge. Mark, Voss said, her voice steady, and Rig launched the payload. The resulting explosion was a thing of beauty, a fiery blossom in the vacuum of space. It caught the edge of the gravity weapon, a smash of energy and light that rippled through the alien structure. For a moment, it seemed to work. The weapon flickered, its power fluctuating wildly as it struggled to cope with the sudden overload. But the aliens hadn't come unprepared. Their technology, damnably resilient, began to stabilize, the flicker turning into a steady glow once more. Well, Bessie said, voice dripping with irony, that was anticlimactic. Can't win 'em all, Titsho said, though his frustration was palpable. Voss stared at the screen, a sliver of despair threatening to creep in, but despair was a luxury they couldn't afford. We're not done yet, she said, voice hard. We may have poked the bear, but now we've got to find a way to bring it down. Suggestions? Rig asked, though his tone said he was out of ideas. Bessie leaned back, arms crossed. Only one. We get inside that thing and take it apart from within. Enter the lion's den, Titsho asked, eyebrows raised. We barely survived the last dance we had with them. But we did survive, Voss countered. And survival's all we've got, so let's make it count. The crew exchanged glances, a silent agreement passing between them. If they were going down, they'd at least go down with style and a considerable amount of spite. All right, Rig said, a grin playing at his lips. Let's see how much havoc we can wreak up close and personal. They maneuvered the Verity towards the alien fleet, the ship a patchwork of resilience and stubbornness. Every creak of the hull, every groan of the engines was testament to their resolve. They were the underdog, the fly in the ointment, and if they were going out, they'd do it with a bang. Get us in close, Voss ordered, her eyes never leaving the view in front of her. Let's show them what a cornered human can really do. As they approached, the alien ships turned their full attention on the Verity, an ominous wall of hostility. Voss felt the pulse of fear, but it was quickly smothered by determination. They'd overcome impossible odds before, and they'd do it again, one galling quip at a time. Best behavior, everyone, Bessie said, cracking her knuckles. Wouldn't want to disappoint our hosts, or make them feel inadequate, Titsho added, a ghost of a smile on his lips. Not likely, Rig said, his hands steady on the weapons. They should have learned by now that underestimating us is hazardous to their health. Voss took a deep breath, the kind that settled the soul and cleared the mind. They were marching into the jaws of death, but they had a plan, and if that plan failed, they'd improvise. Again. Let's get in there and make some noise, she said, her voice filled with the stubborn grit that had kept them alive this long. For humanity, or whatever's left of it, the Verity plowed forward, a battered knight charging into battle with nothing but a shattered lance and a rusty shield. Behind them the scrapyard loomed, a silent witness to their foolhardy bravery. As the alien fleet closed in, Voss knew there were no guarantees, no assurances. They were dancing on the edge, and all they had was each other and a shared determination to not go quietly into the void. "To hell with going quietly," Rig said, echoing her thoughts. "Cheers to that," Bessie added, and even Titcho managed a grim smile. Together they forged ahead, ready to take on whatever the universe dared to throw at them next. It wasn't much, but it was theirs, and by damn, they'd own it until the very end. And so, as the Verity engaged with the alien fleet, the crew braced themselves for the fight of their lives, fueled by defiance, humor, and that uniquely human trait, the absolute refusal to give up. The Verity held together with the tenacity of a conspiracy theory, as they skated through the scrapyard's tangle of dead ships and hollow dreams. The engines whined like a toddler denied dessert, while the decaying battleship hulks loomed around them, each one a tombstone in this graveyard of ambition. "Lovely neighborhood," Bessie said, monitoring the console with an air of deeply cultivated sarcasm. "Bet the rent's killer." Rig tapped at the weapons console, his focus deadly serious. "That's one way to put it. Nothing like a little existential dread to start your day." Captain Voss, standing at the helm like a conductor guiding an orchestra of impending doom, glanced at the decrepit battleship they were using as a diversion. It was an old relic, a ghost of wars long forgotten, much like Voss felt on most days. "All right, people," she said, her voice cutting through the tension like a vibro blade through bureaucracy. "Time to stop playing nice. We need to exploit that gravity weapon. Rig, you ready?" "Ready as I'll ever be in this flying coffin," Rig replied, his fingers dancing over the weapons panel like a gambler pushing his chips all in. Titcho, nursing the controls with the care of a bomb diffuser, muttered, "One more brush with death and I think I'll qualify for a frequent flyer discount." Voss smirked. "Let's earn it then. Bessie, any bright ideas on how we can make that weapon eat itself?" Bessie adjusted her chair, a gleam of mischief in her eyes. "We hit it with everything we've got. Overload it with feedback. Think of it like giving a digital migraine, or a hardware hangover," Rig added, nodding. "If we can destabilize the core, even for a second, it might turn into a cosmic blender. Finally, a plan that involves headaches not caused by my morning coffee," Titcho said, steering the Verity closer to the enemy formation. As they approached, the alien ships responded like a wasp nest prodded by a particularly stupid curiosity, swarming towards the Verity with intent that was anything but cordial. The gravity weapon, a monstrous construct of malice and alien ingenuity, loomed like a judge ready to deliver a particularly harsh sentence. "Here they come," Rig announced, his voice as tight as the ship's engines. "They're not sending a welcome wagon, probably because we shot it to pieces last time," Bessie noted with a smirk. "No manners, these aliens." Voss took a deep breath, the kind that tasted of metal and defiance. "Let's make this one count. We get in, we hit them hard, and we get out. Everyone clear, Crystal," Titcho said, nudging the Verity into a precarious dive. As they closed in on the gravity weapon, the alien ships moved to intercept, sleek shadows against the backdrop of stars, each one humming with intent just shy of murderous. Rig fired up the weapons, the pulse cannons thrumming to life with an eagerness that bordered on homicidal. "Let's see if they like us now," he said, unleashing a volley of energy blasts that streaked across the void like fireworks at a funeral. The alien ships responded in kind, the space between them crackling with the fury of 1,000 vendettas. Explosions blossomed, brief and bright, against the backdrop of the scrapyard. "Who knew the apocalypse could be so pretty?" Bessie quipped, her fingers flying over the console as she worked to keep the ship's battered systems online. "Everyone loves a good light show," Titcho replied, grimacing as he pulled the Verity into a hard turn, the ship protesting with every strained bolt and panel. Voss watched the tactical display, the chaotic dance of violence and survival playing out in real time. The gravity weapon was their target, but getting close enough to take it down was proving to be an exercise in masochism. "How's that migraine coming, Bessie?" Voss asked, her voice steady despite the chaos. "Working on it," Bessie replied, her focus unshakable. "Just need to give it a little more. Headache." "Rig, keep them off us," Voss ordered, even as another volley of alien fire rattled the ship. "Doing my best, Cap," Rig shot back, the weapons discharging in rhythmic bursts that spoke of desperation and determination. Ticho weaved the Verity through the scrapyard, using the derelict ships as impromptu shields. The alien gravity weapon loomed ever closer, its power radiating like a silent scream. Come on," Bessie muttered, her fingers a blur. "Just a little more." Suddenly, there was a flicker on the screens, a momentary lapse in the alien weapon's power output, a crack in the armor. "Now, Voss," Bessie shouted, triumph in her voice. "Hit it, Rig," Voss commanded, her heart thundering with adrenaline. Rig didn't need to be told twice. He unleashed everything the Verity had, the cannons blazing with all the righteous fury of a cornered rat taking its last stand. The energy blast slammed into the gravity weapon, the feedback loop Bessie had engineered amplifying the impact. The alien construct shuddered, its own systems caught in a whirlwind of conflicting signals. For a brief, shining moment, the universe held its breath. Then, with a soundless roar that sent ripples through the vacuum, the gravity weapon imploded, its structure collapsing in on itself with a finality that was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. "We did it," Ticho breathed, disbelief tinged with relief. "Don't break out the champagne yet," Rig cautioned, his focus still on the remaining alien ships. Voss felt a grim satisfaction settle over her. One threat down, but they weren't out of the woods yet. The alien fleet was still very much alive and very much interested in making human souffle out of them. "Let's not stick around for the after-party," Voss said, her gaze locked on the sensors. "Time to hightail it out of here before they regroup." "On it," Ticho replied, already plotting a course back through the scrapyard's labyrinthine corridors. Bessie, ever the cynic, shook her head. "I'd say we made a friend, but I think we've just upgraded to frenemies with benefits." "Benefits like trying to kill us?" Rig asked, glancing at her sideways. "Exactly," Bessie replied with a smirk. Who knew an interstellar war could be so intimate? As Ticho navigated them through the scrapyard, the alien ships hesitated, their formation breaking as they processed the loss of their weapon. It was a slim advantage, but one the Verity couldn't afford to ignore. "Best not to overstay our welcome," Voss said, her voice a blend of command and wry humor. "I hear alien hospitality is overrated anyway." The Verity weaved through the graveyard of metal and forgotten dreams, each turn a gamble, every acceleration a prayer whispered to the universe. The alien ships gave chase, but their coordination faltered, the loss of their gravity weapon leaving them disoriented and vulnerable. "Just a little more," Ticho muttered, his grip on the controls steady despite the sweat beading on his brow. Bessie monitored the engines, coaxing every last ounce of performance from the ship's beleaguered systems. "I swear if we make it out of this, I'm sending the Verity in for a spa day. This girl deserves a break." "She'll need it," Rig agreed, still watching the tactical display with hawk-like intensity. "And so will we." Voss leaned back slightly, the tension in her muscles screaming for release. They'd survived, once again, against odds that would make any betting man laugh them out of the room. But survival was a game they knew too well, and victory, however temporary, was theirs for the moment. "Nice work, everyone," Voss said, her voice softer now, the adrenaline beginning to ebb. "We live to fight another day. Or another Ior, at least," Bessie added, her tone dry but tinged with relief. "And for now, that's good enough," Rig said, a rare, genuine smile breaking through his usual stoicism. The Verity sped out of the scrapyard, leaving behind the wreckage of what had once been an insurmountable foe. They were battered and bruised, but still breathing, still fighting, an indomitable spirit that refused to be extinguished. As they left the chaos behind, Ticho finally allowed himself a chuckle. "Next time someone asks for a strategy on surviving an alien ambush, I'm gonna suggest a really big headache." "Works every time," Voss replied, her smile a testament to the absurdity and triumph of their latest escapade. The Verity sailed into the vastness of space, a battered testament to human stubbornness and ingenuity. Ahead lay uncertainty, but also possibility. Their journey far from over, their story still unfolding in the unforgiving darkness of the cosmos. The Verity was limping through the void like a one-legged man in a groin-kicking contest, every creak and groan a reminder that they were living on borrowed time. Voss kept her eyes on the flickering display screens, her thoughts a whirlwind of survival tactics and sarcastic quips she hadn't yet unleashed. Somehow, they'd pulled off the impossible, made the universe's nastiest headache go kaboom, and yet here they were, no closer to a vacation or even a decent cup of coffee. "Well," Bessie muttered, her voice cutting through the tension like a rusty buzzsaw, "that was a fun little exercise in not dying. Like watching your life flash before your eyes but with more explosions," Rig added, his fingers still dancing across the weapon's controls as if daring the universe to send another wave their way. "Explosions and bad life choices," Ticho put in, nursing the controls as though coaxing a particularly grumpy feline into a carrier. "Not exactly the frequent flyer miles I had in mind." Voss smirked, leaning back in her chair. "If this keeps up, I'll end up writing a book. 100 Ways to Die in Space and Still Complain About It." The crew chuckled, a brief moment of levity amidst the chaos. But the respite was short-lived. The alien ships were still out there, licking their wounds and no doubt plotting their revenge with all the subtlety of a sledgehammer. "So, what's the plan, fearless leader?" Bessie asked, her sarcasm a comforting constant amidst the sea of unpredictability. Voss took a deep breath, the kind that tasted of ozone and stress. "We've got the upper hand for now. Let's see how long we can keep it before the universe decides to remind us of our place. We exploit the chaos," Ticho suggested, his eyes never leaving the navigation screen. "They're disorganized, off balance. We can use that." Rig grinned, a wolfish gleam in his eye. "So, hit 'em while they're reeling, dance like nobody's watching, and shoot like everyone is." "Exactly," Voss said, nodding approvingly. "Bessie, keep coaxing power from those engines. Ticho, steer us right through their formation, and Rig, save your best fireworks for the finale." "Understood," Bessie replied, her fingers flying across the console with a practiced ease that belied the pressure of their situation. "Let's give them a show they won't forget," Ticho said, initiating a series of daring maneuvers that would have made a stunt pilot sweat. The Verity darted through the debris field, using the ghostly hulks of old ships as cover while they prepared to strike. The alien fleet, momentarily disoriented by the loss of their shiny toy, scrambled to regroup, unwittingly playing into the human crew's hands. "They're moving like drunk toddlers," Rig observed, his voice carrying a note of grim delight. "Time to give them a lesson in coordination." With a deft touch, he fired off a spread of missiles, each one locking onto the alien ships like a heat-seeking hangover. The explosions lit up the void in a macabre ballet of destruction, debris spinning lazily in the blackness. "Looks like they're catching on," Bessie noted, glancing at the sensors. "But they're still slow." "Must be the hangover. Or they're just not morning people," Ticho quipped, pulling the Verity into another stomach-churning turn. Voss watched the tactical display with the eyes of a hawk, every nerve on edge, every instinct honed to a razor's edge. "Let's keep up the pressure. We can't let them regroup." "Agreed," Rig said, his voice as steady as the ship was not. He unleashed another barrage, a symphony of destruction that sang a discordant tune in the vacuum of space. The alien ships, caught in the throes of chaos, struggled to mount an effective counterattack. Their shots went wide, their coordination fraying like an old rope under too much weight. "Looks like the morning coffee didn't kick in," Bessie snorted, shaking her head. "Too bad for them. Good for us," Ticho added, banking hard to avoid a stray volley. "Only hangover I want is the one I can sleep off." The Verity danced through the battlefield, a nimble predator amidst a herd of startled prey. Voss felt a grim satisfaction settle in her bones. They were outnumbered, outgunned, but not outmatched. Not yet. Keep hitting them, she ordered, her voice a whipcrack of authority. We've got them on the ropes. Let's make sure they stay there. Rig complied with relish, the weapons console a blur of activity as he directed the ship's arsenal with precision and malice. Explosion after explosion rocked the alien formation, each detonation a testament to human ingenuity and sheer bloody-mindedness. We're making a dent, Bessie reported, her voice tinged with cautious optimism. They're pulling back, trying to regroup. Not on my watch, Voss said, determination etched in every line of her face. Titcho, keep us in the thick of it. With pleasure, Titcho replied, his grin as sharp as a vibro blade. He pushed the Verity to its limits, weaving through the alien ships with reckless abandon. The alien fleet, battered and beleaguered, struggled to maintain cohesion under the relentless assault. Their formation broke apart, ships scattering like leaves before a hurricane. Keep hammering them, Voss urged, adrenaline scorching through her veins. We need to finish this. Rig answered with a salvo that would have put a fireworks display to shame, each shot finding its mark with unerring accuracy. The aliens, caught in the crosshairs of fate, could do little but crumble under the onslaught. Looks like they're breaking, Bessie said, her tone a mix of satisfaction and disbelief. We might just pull this off. Never doubted it for a second, Titcho said, though the sweat on his brow told a different story. Voss allowed herself a rare smile, the first crack in her steely demeanor. They were winning against all odds on a day when even hope seemed like a punchline. It was absurd, ridiculous, and utterly magnificent. Let's not celebrate too soon, she cautioned, though her heart soared with the taste of victory. We still have to get out of here. Right? Rig agreed, his focus unwavering. No sense in sticking around for the cleanup. Bessie nodded, her fingers dancing over the controls with renewed vigor. Let's wrap this up and get the hell out. Sounds like a plan, Voss said, her voice a blend of command and camaraderie. Let's finish this. With one final, devastating volley, they shattered the remnants of the alien fleet, the survivors scattering into the depths of space like ghosts fleeing the dawn. It was over, for now. Well, Titcho said, leaning back in his seat with a sigh of relief, that was a hell of a way to start the day. Bessie chuckled, shaking her head. Just another Tuesday in space. Voss allowed herself a moment to breathe, the tension in her shoulders easing ever so slightly. They'd done it. Against all odds, they'd survived the storm and come out the other side not unscathed but unbroken. Good work, everyone, she said, her voice warm with gratitude and pride. We've got a long way to go, but for now, we're alive. And that's more than we could say an ire ago, Rig added, a rare smile breaking through his stoic facade. As the Verity sailed away from the battlefield, leaving behind the wreckage of their latest adventure, the crew allowed themselves a moment to savor the hard-won victory. They were tired, bruised, and battered, but they'd faced the abyss and laughed in its face. Next time, Voss said, a twinkle in her eye, let's try not to make things quite so dramatic. Where's the fun in that? Bessie replied, her grin as infectious as ever. Titcho chuckled, steering them towards whatever awaited in the great unknown. Here's to more adventures then. And maybe fewer headaches. Here's hoping, Rig said, raising an imaginary glass. The Verity cruised through the expanse of space, a testament to human tenacity and ingenuity. Ahead lay uncertainty and challenge, but also possibility. As they continued their journey, one thing was clear: they were far from done. The stars beckoned, and with a crew like theirs, anything was possible. Here's to surviving, Voss said, her voice carrying the weight of hope and humor, and to living to tell the tale. The crew echoed her sentiment, their spirits buoyed by the triumph. They had faced the darkness and emerged victorious, bound together by the shared experience of chaos and courage. The Verity sailed on, a beacon of resilience in the unending night, its crew a testament to the indomitable spirit of humanity, ready to face whatever the cosmos threw their way next. The scrapyard, once a graveyard of forgotten dreams and rusted ambitions, now lay in ruins, An even bigger mess than before, if that was possible. A place that had seen more explosions than a pyromaniac's birthday party was finally quiet, save for the hissing of cooling metal and the distant echo of their recent fireworks display. Captain Voss lounged in her chair, surveying the mess through the ship's flickering display screen. Well, that wasn't too bad for a Tuesday morning. Could have been worse. Rig, seated at the weapons console, stretched his arms overhead with a yawn that could swallow a small planet. Yeah, we could have been the ones floating out there like yesterday's trash. Good job, us. Nothing like vaporized aliens to start your day, Bessie added, her voice dripping with the kind of sarcasm that could strip paint. She was tapping rhythmically on her console, coaxing the engines back into something resembling normalcy. I'm thinking we should make this a weekly thing. Maybe sell tickets. Could call it the Verity Roadshow, Ticho suggested from the pilot's seat, his hands moving over the controls with the kind of casual precision that bordered on reckless. Featuring the greatest hits of alien debris. Limited seating, first come, first served. And by limited seating, you mean unless you're strapped to a missile, you're out of luck, Rig noted, running a diagnostic on the weapon systems. We're gonna need a hell of a cleanup crew if we keep this up. Voss chuckled, a sound that was more relief than humor. Too bad we don't get paid for cleaning up after ourselves. Otherwise we'd be rich. You mean we're not? Ticho feigned surprise, throwing a mock look back at Voss. I was hoping to retire on the space yacht of my dreams. Dreams are for people with less interesting lives, Bessie retorted, shaking her head. We've got reality, and it's got a hell of a sense of humor. The Verity cruised away from the battlefield, leaving behind a canvas of chaos even Picasso would have struggled to interpret. Their ship, held together by more luck than design, was still flying. And in the unforgiving expanse of space, that was a victory in itself. So, fearless leader, what's next? Rig asked, glancing over at Voss. Do we stick around and give interviews, or do we make a graceful exit? Voss leaned back, contemplating their options or lack thereof. We're heading back to the outpost. Time to refuel, resupply, and remind ourselves why we keep doing this. Because we're idiots with a death wish, Ticho suggested, smirking. Speak for yourself, Bessie replied, adjusting the power flow to the engines. I do it for the thrill of almost dying every other Wednesday. Adventure, excitement. A Jedi craves not these things, Rig intoned in a terrible impersonation of a long-forgotten movie franchise. But we sure as hell do. Voss couldn't help but smile, the banter a comforting undercurrent to their shared survival. Let's just get home before the universe decides to throw another wrench in the works. The journey back to the outpost was mercifully uneventful. The Verity slipped through the void, a testament to human resilience or maybe just stubbornness. As the outpost loomed into view, a cluster of steel and hope orbiting a distant, indifferent star, the crew prepared for their return. Home, sweet half-functional home, Ticho said, guiding the ship towards one of the docking bays. I missed the smell of recycled air and questionable cafeteria food. Nothing like eating mystery stew under flickering lights to make you appreciate the finer things in life, Bessie agreed, shutting down the engines with a satisfied sigh. I wonder if they've cleaned the showers since we left. Don't get your hopes up, Rig warned, unbuckling his harness. Last time I checked, the grime was holding the tiles together. The docking procedure was routine, a welcome change from the chaos they usually attracted. As the ship settled into place, Voss stood, stretching out the kinks accumulated from hours of high-stakes maneuvering. All right, folks, you know the drill. Quick debrief, then a much-needed break. After that, maybe we can find out why we keep risking our necks out here. Because we're the only ones stupid enough to do it, Bessie offered, her grin as sharp as a vibro blade. And because someone's got to make sure the aliens remember not to mess with us. Voss nodded. Let's go remind everyone why we're still the best show in town. The crew disembarked, the familiar sights and sounds of the outpost enveloping them like a well-worn jacket. The corridor buzzed with the usual mix of harried personnel and persistent maintenance teams doing their best impression of keeping the place from falling apart. "Looks like nothing's changed," Ticho observed, sidestepping a particularly suspicious-looking puddle of coolant. "Except maybe the level of incompetence," Rig added, eyeing a maintenance droid that was either recharging or contemplating existential dread. As they made their way to the debriefing room, Voss couldn't help but reflect on what had just transpired. They'd faced down the impossible and come out on top, a feat not often celebrated but always noted. Maybe this time, they'd get more than a pat on the back and better luck next time. The debriefing was as expected, terse, full of technical jargon and just enough bureaucracy to remind them why they preferred being in space rather than stuck in meetings. The brass, for what it was worth, seemed impressed with their survival, though whether it was due to actual skill or sheer dumb luck was anyone's guess. Voss stood before the assembled officers and peers, recounting the battle with the kind of detached humor that only those who'd truly been there could appreciate. "And that's how we turned an alien armada into cosmic confetti. Next time we're thinking about charging extra for the show." Laughter rippled through the room, a brief moment of levity that reminded everyone why they kept fighting. It wasn't just about survival, it was about the shared stories, the camaraderie, and the knowledge that they were part of something larger. After the debrief, the crew dispersed, seeking out their own versions of solace and sanity. Voss found herself in the Outpost's viewing lounge, a dimly lit space where the stars stretched out beyond the window, a reminder of the vast unknown they called home. Bessie joined her, carrying 2 steaming mugs. "Figured you could use this. It's either coffee or very aggressive tea. I wouldn't bet my life on which." Voss accepted the mug with a nod. "I'll take my chances." "Thanks, Bessie." They sat in silence for a moment, the enormity of space a comforting presence beyond the glass. "You think they'll remember this one?" Bessie asked, her voice soft, lacking its usual edge. Voss took a sip, the warmth seeping into her bones. "Maybe, but it's not about being remembered. It's about reminding ourselves why we do it. We made a difference out there, even if it's just for today." Bessie nodded, her expression thoughtful. "Here's hoping we can keep doing it. Seems like the universe has no shortage of idiots trying to ruin it for the rest of us." "Yeah," Voss agreed, a small smile tugging at her lips. "But as long as there are idiots, there'll be people like us to keep them in check." "To idiots," Bessie said, raising her mug in a mock toast. "And to the ones who stop them," Voss replied, clinking her mug against Bessie's. The hours passed, and soon the crew found themselves gathered once more, this time in the mess hall, the familiar chaos of the Outpost a comforting backdrop to their banter and bickering. "So, what's next for the infamous crew of the Verity?" Ticho asked, looking over a tray of what might generously be called food. "Repair, refuel, and maybe get some real sleep," Rig suggested, digging into his own questionable meal. "Assuming the universe doesn't decide to throw another party in our honor." Bessie snorted. "With our luck, there's probably a committee planning something disastrous as we speak." Voss leaned back in her chair, the weight of command momentarily lifting. "Whatever comes next, we'll face it like we always do, with sarcasm, poor planning, and a bit of luck." "Sounds like a plan," Ticho said, raising his glass in a toast. The crew joined in, their glasses clinking in a ritual as old as time. It wasn't about the destination, but the journey and those who shared it. In the vastness of space, where hope was often a punchline and survival a daily miracle, they had each other. And that, for now, was enough. As the Verity's crew laughed and joked, the Outpost's lights flickering like stars in a playful wink, the universe continued its indifferent spin. But somewhere, amidst the debris and the darkness, lay the promise of new adventures, new challenges, and the certainty that whatever happened next, they'd face it together.